This is from my friend Joe. JT, do you think there is any way possible Russ actually is on the team for the first game of the regular season? Thanks. I don't think so. I've talked to some people who are connected with the situation, and they say that that's the top priority. All the positive Russ talk out there is strictly for leverage. Here's the reality of the situation. It's the same issue with the Kevin Durant thing. You know, like Sean Marks and Joe Tsai are sick of being in the business of dealing with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Why is that? They're basketball fans. They want to see a quality basketball product, and the product out there on the court wasn't good enough for them, and they believe that KD and Kyrie were distracting from that, right? So why would you bring them back into training camp and expect to breed a new basketball focus with Kyrie, who wants out and has beef with the front office, and Kevin Durant, who wants out? So, and may or may not have beef with Kyrie at this point. Like, we don't know, right? So at the end of the day, like, bringing something like that to training camp immediately derails your attempt to start the season on a good note. This is why I'm not a huge fan of monumental midseason trades, like midseason trades involving stars. Like, don't wait to the deadline to make a deal. Make the deal in the offseason. Because if you can get into training camp and sit down on that first day, and Darvin Ham can go up to the whiteboard and he can write, here are our team identity. This is our team identity. These are our rules. These are our goals. This is the tone we're going to set. And from day one, you establish that and everyone is bought in. That's how you get seasons like the 2022 Warriors or the 2020 Lakers, who from the start of the regular season are just whooping everybody's ass. Like, the Warriors started 11-1, I think, right? Or 14-1. And the Lakers in 2020 started 24-3. You know, like, they were incredibly dominant from the start of the season because from the opening moment of training camp, they were just completely and totally locked in. Bringing Russell Westbrook back when everyone knows you've been trying to move him, with all of the issues that he's having, all that does is kick your season off on the wrong note. So I would be absolutely stunned if the Lakers brought Russ back. My guess is if they struggle to trade him, that he'll be waived or something along those lines bought out. This is from George. I think Ham is now LeBron's 8th coach in the NBA. Any advice for him, especially being a head coach for the first time? He won with Vogel, but seems he tuned him out in just 2 seasons after that. Couple things. First of all, LeBron's in his 20th season, so I don't think if LeBron tunes him out when he's in his 22nd season, that's who cares at this point. The idea of a group buying into a coach and then eventually buying out, that's just normal. It's fatigue. Anytime that a person is in a leadership role over you and they have disciplinary authority over you, it can get fatiguing. That'll happen in every workplace. That's why people like changes of scenery. That's why you look for a new gig at your job, or you look to transfer to a different location or things along those lines. It's authority fatigue. So that's normal. Darvin Ham already has way more coaching experience than I could ever have. So there's nothing that I could offer Darvin Ham as advice. My opinion on coaching, based on my brief coaching experience with high school kids and being around all the college coaches that I was around in my life, my opinion is don't be reticent of clinging to your core philosophy. Basketball can be played, coached, taught in so many different ways. I've never tried to tell you guys that my belief system about basketball is the unimpeachable, perfect way to go about the game of basketball. This is just my belief. This is the way that I see the game. This is the way that I coach. This is the way that I would manage a team, or this is the way that I would coach in the NBA, or this is the way that I would play in the NBA. That's just my opinion. That's all it is. So with coaching, you have your core philosophy, which is what I just described, but then you have your roster. And your roster is going to have distinct strengths and weaknesses. And it's far more important for you to cater your coaching philosophy towards your strengths and away from your weaknesses than it is for you to inflict your core philosophy on people. Like, for instance, you guys know I'm huge on switching. I hate traditional bigs. I'm a big believer in I'm a big believer in drive and kick, 5-out basketball, not having someone in the dunker spot. I'm a big believer in targeting players that are, bigger rim pressuring type of guys. You guys know how I see the game. But if I was running the Lakers this year, I would look at it like, we don't have great wings. We have Anthony Davis and two pretty solid backup center type of players, right? And I've got LeBron James. And then I've got a boatload of small, thin guards. So I don't know that we can do a ton of switching with this group. So even though my core philosophy is to switch, I think you got to run drop coverage with this group. And you've got to try to funnel everybody to Anthony Davis. You might even have to play big and keep Anthony Davis at the 4 a lot because they don't have enough guys on the roster that are 6'6" or taller, right? So it's very important for my core basketball philosophy not to cause me to inflict a poor strategy on my group. And so what'll be really interesting to see, and we don't know what the final roster is going to look like with the Lakers, but let's take a look at how Darvin Ham cultivates his personal basketball philosophy, but adjusts it and changes it to fit with the group of guys that he has with the Lakers. This is from King Control. Who's the best LeBron James teammate? Dwayne Wade, Kyrie Irving, or Anthony Davis? Not peak, just when they were playing together. To me, this is so cut and dry. It's Anthony Davis. LeBron James has won 4 championships. He's won 10 conference championships. I have never, ever seen him get consistent support the way that he did from Anthony Davis. I have never seen the game look as easy for him as it did in 2020 alongside that group, largely because of what Anthony Davis does. The first 3 championships that LeBron James won have become massively underrated over the years because you think of the Wade Bosch Heat as like a super team, and you think of the Kyrie, Kevin Love Cavs as a super team. They weren't. The Miami Heat were a bona fide super team in the first season in 2011, which is why that 2011 finals was such a disappointing collapse. But after that, Dwayne Wade fell off a cliff, just wasn't even close to the same player, especially by the time they got to the 2012 postseason. And Chris Bosh, in that third role, was never really a reliable scorer, and by the end was basically just a stretch big. Not undercutting what those guys did in their careers, it's just the reality of what that Miami Heat team was. The 2012-2013 Heat were a lot closer to the 2022 Warriors. Very well coached, very well run, very bought in, very disciplined, very smart, but they weren't the most talented team. That's why the 2012 Thunder were picked as the favorites in Vegas to win the 2012 finals. That's why the 2013 Spurs were the favorites in the 2013 finals. No one viewed the Heat as high talent. Same goes with the Cavs. Kyrie Irving, basically a scoring guard that's undersized, not great defensively, and Kevin Love was just downright bad a lot of the time when he was in Cleveland. So, to me, the 2020 Lakers with this real bona fide top-tier superstar next to LeBron with really quality role players, that was his best team. That was their most comfortable and easy playoff run. As a result of that, Anthony Davis was by far the best player that he played with. Let's see. We got time for a few more here. This is from Joe. What's your opinion on the Denver Nuggets? You haven't talked about them much yet, so I'm curious. I think they're a top 4 team in the league in the West when they're healthy. Absolutely. I absolutely think they're top 4. I'd actually put them 3rd behind the Clippers. If the Lakers do close the Kyrie Irving deal, I'd put Kyrie Irving above them. But I'm a huge believer in what Denver does. I love the KCP signing. I think KCP is going to be a fantastic fit alongside that group. I think he's a better defensive player than Will Barton. And even though I don't think he's as skilled offensively, particularly putting the basketball on the floor, I do think he's better at specific things that he'll need to do alongside Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. That's spot-up shooting and slashing. KCP is actually sneaky one of the best closeout attackers in the league because he's such a good one-leg leaper. He's really good at jumping off of his left leg, and that's a specific skill for extension. When you're being pursued by a shot blocker, you want to get the ball to the rim as fast as possible. He's very, very good at not only knocking down spot-up threes, but beating closeouts, ripping through to the right, and finishing with his right-hand layup off the glass. He made a ton of huge plays in the NBA Finals that were a huge part of why the Lakers won the title. I thought it was a great get for Denver. Loved the extension that they signed for him as well. He's worth every penny. Love that deal. Michael Porter Jr.'s health is obviously a concern, but just the core of Jamal Murray with Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon. I don't know why they picked DeAndre Jordan. I have no idea why DeAndre Jordan keeps getting deals. I asked some people about it in Vegas, and the people that were all plugged in and connected say it's because DeAndre Jordan's excellent in the locker room. Maybe that's what it is, but I mean, he'll probably end up playing minutes. So, but I'm just being nitpicky there. I think Denver is easily the 3rd best team in the West. Absolutely in that second tier of contenders where if some things break right, they can win. I would just put the Lakers ahead of them if they got Kyrie. This is from Kevin. What do you think is the biggest problem basketball-wise with the NBA today? I talked about it a little earlier with the with players being available, but in terms of like the actual product, the on-court product, I would probably go with officiating and foul baiting. Not going to dive into that right now because it's something I've talked about a lot over the course of the playoffs, but the league needs to find a way to incentivize players playing basketball rather than trying to dupe the referees. It'll just make for a better television product, which will increase the ratings. And honestly, it's basketball blasphemy, and I think it's bad for the game. The one thing I would say in terms of overall basketball development, just in general, I think that players, especially in the youth basketball, are not building well-rounded enough basketball skill sets, particularly in the mid-range and the short range. There's a good reason why the analytics movement has dissuaded teams from being heavily relying on mid-range jump shooting. I get all of that. But every time the league does anything, the league evolves with it. If you look at offensive ratings throughout NBA history, average offensive ratings, they kind of cycle up and then they cycle down, they cycle up and they cycle down. And the main reason why is physicality from the refs, like how much the refs allow, how liberal they are with the whistle. But another big part of it is the defense has evolved too. The offense can come up with, high volume 3-point shooting, 5-out attack, all these different things to try to generate quality offense in the NBA, and it will work for a little while, but then the defense will adjust. And one of the big things that you're seeing a lot right now is in the same way that offenses are geared towards generating high-quality 3-point shots and high-quality rim attempts, the NBA defenses are giving up driving lanes at the expense of chasing guys off the 3-point line. So if you have a good funneling system, the Utah Jazz are actually really good at this in the regular season before they got blown up. But the idea is if you can chase a guy off the 3-point line and you've got Rudy Gobert waiting under the basket, and as long as that guard can then rotate to the next guy, you're fine. Everything's covered. And so now there's this big opening in the middle of the floor between 5 feet and 25 feet where there's just nothing going on. There's not a whole lot of defense there. Rotation's not even trying to pick you up there. And so there's a shortage. There's an area of opportunity there for the best mid-range scorers in the league to get high-quality shots. When you look at the math, yes, a wide-open three simply mathematically is worth so much more than a wide-open mid-range jump shot that it makes no sense to take the mid-range jump shot. But if all of the 3-point shots are contested because that's what the defense is geared towards taking away and the rim is occupied, then the mid-range shots, even though in a vacuum they're less valuable, if they're open, higher quality shots, the shot quality goes through the roof and those might actually be your best shots. I'd like to see more young basketball players building out the well-rounded game because you don't know what's going to happen over the course of over the years while you're trying to get to the league, how the game might change. You might need to be good at a specific thing and you don't want to be caught, with your pants down in the league because you're not ready for it. So I would like to see players get a little bit better in the mid-range. This is from Leo. Why do you think MJ is the GOAT? I think MJ is a more polished scorer. LeBron's a more effective scorer. I actually think LeBron's a better defensive player in terms of his versatility. But make no mistake, the reality is the results favor Michael Jordan. There's an argument there that is almost unbeatable. If you've won 6 championships in 8 years and you're so much better than all of your peers that just to mention one of them in your name in the same sentence with your name is like blasphemy. Like if someone said to you, I thought Hakeem was better than Jordan, you'd laugh them out of the room. If someone said, I thought Charles Barkley was better than Jordan, you'd laugh them out of the room. If they said that about any of the half dozen players that were competing with MJ at the top of the league that time, none of them were even in the same breath. And I thought LeBron was the best player of this era. And the vast majority of people would agree, but there were significant stretches where it was like, hey, KD's kind of right there. Or, hey, Steph's kind of right there. Hey, Giannis is kind of right there, right? Like, the LeBron only really in I would say 2012, 2013, and then maybe 2017, 2018, depending on who you ask. There wasn't really a consistent stretch where he was just monumentally better than everybody. And so, to me, that's not something that I'd hold against MJ. Like, LeBron fans will be like, that's because MJ played worse competition. Your competition is your competition. And the reality is MJ could have worked hard enough to just be a little bit better than those guys. That's not what happened. He worked so psychotically hard that he was monumentally better than all of them. And as a result, he had the most dominant run in modern NBA history, 6 championships in 8 tries. You guys know I'm a huge LeBron fan. LeBron got me to fall in love with the game of basketball. That's literally why I do what I do. I was raised on baseball and football. I saw LeBron playing basketball in 2006, fell in love with the game. I've given it everything I've had for the almost 2 decades since then. That's how much I respect LeBron. Huge fan of his. He's not MJ. He wasn't as dominant. He wasn't the level of player that he was. LeBron very well might be a better basketball player, and as the game has evolved, I'd probably say that's true. LeBron's probably a better player if you plucked the peak of LeBron versus the peak of MJ. But the game of basketball is evolving. MJ was so far ahead of the curve that he was dominant. LeBron was slightly ahead of the curve and was slightly less dominant. To me, he's the second best player of all time. He'd have to win 1 or 2 more and continue to dominate for longer for me to kind of move him into that conversation. This is from Bradley. Why you always giving up a franchise's future/present? This is funny. For all-star players, when you have no certainty that player will bring you a ring, now instead of planning for a future where your young players are supposed to be the top brass, you have your ass in your hands. Basically saying that he disagrees with my ideology of being aggressive and pushing your chips in the middle. Look, man, that's just the way that I see it. Like, if I was running a team, I would push my chips into the table, go for a title. As soon as I realized that it was a lost cause, I'd sell the house and accumulate assets. And then I'd push all the chips in the middle. I'd make a run, and then I'd pull back and I'd accumulate assets. That's just the way that I would do it. The reason why I would do that is because I believe that is the most consistently successful. I think the Warriors are the exception to the rule. I think that they are lucky in the sense that they have players who are loyal. Steph is loyal. Klay Thompson is loyal. Draymond Green is loyal. So many times it ends up like the Thunder, where you get James Harden with a wandering eye, Kevin Durant with a wandering eye. It ends up not materializing. So I think the idea of building organically through the draft and building that long-term, continuity, even though I think that's absolutely what's best for the league, even though I want the league to try to structure the CBA to try to make that a little bit more feasible for the teams, I'm pro that. But in terms of under the current predicament, under the current rules, if I was running a team, how I would try to win is pushing my chips into the middle, because I think that's the most consistently successful. You literally saw that with the Raptors in 2019. You saw that with the Lakers in 2020. You saw that with the Cavaliers when they pushed everything in for LeBron. You saw that with the Miami Heat. There are these little spurts there, but no one's wrong. Like if you want to go the other way, you're right there as well. It worked for the 2014 Spurs. It worked for the Golden State Warriors. Again, like I talked about earlier, this is just my philosophy on the game of basketball based on the current rules. If the rules change, I'm never married to a strategy. This is just the way that I see the game. There's no right or wrong answer. This is from Joshua. Remember when you said Steph can... I added some trolls in here. Remember when you said Steph can no longer average 30 on grade efficiency, and the only people who believed he could do it again were Steph fans? Not to be rude, I enjoy your content. So, again, and I have Warriors fans still commenting under my YouTube videos like, you picked against us in the conference finals. And it's like, and I've had people that say that I picked against them all 4 rounds, which definitely didn't happen. I picked the Warriors to win the first round. I picked them to win the second round. I picked them to win the finals. Just against Dallas, I didn't have a good feel for the series. I didn't know what to make of it. Dallas just beat the best team in the league, like beat the living shit out of the best team in the league in Game 7 in Phoenix. And Phoenix was like 8 games better than everybody in the regular season. As much as I believe in the Warriors, they weren't the most talented team in the league, like we talked about earlier with the Boston Celtics. Like, Steph's best teammate was Andrew Wiggins. Like it wasn't an anti-Warriors take. I'm just trying to predict something that's completely unpredictable. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Steph, and I'm a huge fan of the way the Warriors run their team. Don't ever take a prediction personal. Predictions are really hard to do. If I could make predictions for a living, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be in Vegas, and I'd be making money gambling on sports. That's not the case. I do my best to make predictions because that's kind of what this job requires, but I don't think we should put that much weight on it. As far as Steph goes, like guys, like he had a 40, I think it was like a 41 game sample size where he couldn't shoot. Like it was the longest, most extended, significant slump of his career, and nothing else was close. And he's a small guard who is now, I believe, 34 years old. So that's the only reason why I said that stuff. I was like, Steph may be on the decline. But what did I say after the finals? I was wrong. I said that Steph is at the peak of his powers. I said this is the best I've ever seen him look. I thought this was his most impressive playoff run. And I said very clearly what happened during the regular season was clearly a blip and not a trend. I'm going to be wrong about a lot of stuff, guys. Like I'm going to do the very best I can. The one promise I can make you guys is I'm not going to be a stubborn asshole. If I'm wrong about something, I'm going to admit it and move on. I was wrong about Steph declining too fast. It was never an anti-Steph thing. I was reacting to data. There was a significant chunk of data where he didn't shoot well. And then when I watched the games with my eyeballs, I was seeing Steph not getting as much separation, not getting quality looks, and then wasn't making them when he was getting them. That was just the reality. And you Warriors fans at the time, if you were confident, if you were thinking Steph will be fine, you weren't basing it on what you were seeing. You were basing it on faith in Steph. Faith is an invincible thing. There's nothing I can do to convince you guys when you have that kind of faith. It's amazing that Steph turned it around. I was wrong. Don't ever take anything like that personal. I don't have any sort of beef with anybody with the Warriors or Steph. All right, let's do 3 more. This is from Felipe. What's more important in your opinion, offense or defense? Talked about this earlier, so I won't go too much further into it, but I believe offense is more important strictly because it's something that you can't coach up or convince players to do by playing harder or anything along those lines, especially when you get to the NBA postseason. The defensive end, you absolutely can coach up. You absolutely can make up for a lot of limitations with effort and things along those lines. So if you have a supreme offensive talent, that's always going to beat a supreme defensive talent, in my opinion. This is from Jared. What was the toughest lesson that you've learned as a hooper? This is a good question. For all of you young kids out there that are trying to play one day, however good you think you need to be in order to be good enough to succeed at the highest levels of college basketball and things like that, you just need to get so much better than you would even think. If you think you're a good shooter, I'll give you some basic parameters. Like you need to be able to go on the gun, the rebounding machine, or when you have rebounders, and you need to be able to consistently hit between 70 and 80% of your threes when you're by yourself. Like when you're at the gym, standing alone on the court, 70 to 80% of them need to go in. That's when you know you're a really good shooter. I had a coach once that would say, are you a shooter or are you a maker? Everyone's a shooter. Makers are guys that can, in the gym, knock down 70 to 80% of them when they're open. That will translate to you shooting 40, 45% in a game setting. Ball handling. Ball handling is extremely tedious. It takes a very long time. The progress is so difficult to track because it happens so little by little, and it's boring. No one likes to just go up and dribble a basketball. You'd rather shoot or work on or play play pickup and things along those lines. Take the time to develop your ball handling. It is by far the most valuable skill if you want to be a high-end basketball player, not a role player. Any athlete can be a role player like I was in college who can grab rebounds and defend and do things like that. But if you want to be a meaningful offensive fulcrum on a basketball team, you have to be able to dribble the basketball, take the hours and hours and hours that it takes to develop that skill set. And then most importantly, and Alex Caruso said this a long time ago, talking about the G League, understand the job you're trying out for. Chances are you're not going to be so good that you can be Mr. All-American that does everything offensively and then the rest of the team does the dirty work for you. Chances are, even if you're very good, you're going to have to be reliable in the little things. Understand the position you're trying out for. You're not trying out for a guy who scores 20 points a game. You were trying out for a guy that can consistently run the coach's defensive scheme in all the elements of it and all the different spots on the floor. The guy that knows all the plays and runs them correctly. The guy that turns and boxes out a man every single time, gets back in transition defense, sits in a defensive stance and contains on the perimeter. Those are the things that coaches in particular are obsessed with. Never, ever, ever let the fun stuff, which I love the fun stuff. I love working on turnaround jump shots and step backs and things like that. Never let the fun stuff distract you from the fact that you have to be a good all-around basketball player to contribute to any sort of good basketball team. Let's see. I'm going to do one more, but I'm going to look for an interesting one here. And I plan. I try to read the YouTube comments as much as I can for feedback. So anytime you guys have other things you want the show to talk about, or questions, comments, feedback, anything like that, drop it in the YouTube comments. Drop it in my Twitter mentions. I also have my Twitter DMs open. You guys can send stuff to me there. Let's see. Okay, I'll do two more fun ones here. This is also from Felipe. Does your girl hoop too? So my wife was a very good high school basketball player, and we went to the same high school, didn't know each other. It's kind of weird. We met for the first time many years after high school. I shouldn't say many years. I believe it was 5 years after. So my wife and I in August will have been together 8 years. In October, we will have been married for 4. She right now doesn't do anything with the game of basketball, but she actually played in college. She played at Hamlin University up in Minnesota. She only played for a half of a season, got sick of it, and got out. One of the most interesting phenomenon that I've seen, I talked about this a little bit with Rachel Demita when we had her on the show, but I never get sick of the game, and I see so many people get sick of it. My wife was one of those people that was devoted to the game of basketball, from the time she was 12 to the time she was 20. And then just one day she was done with it, and so she's not involved in the game anymore, but she understands it really well because she played in college. And so that's kind of nice for me, because I think she doesn't have the obsession that I have, obviously, but I think she understands my obsession, which is what allowed her to support me doing this. I did 152 episodes of State of the Lakers before I did this, so I've done hundreds and hundreds of post-game shows up late at night, affecting our social life, things like that. She just gets it. She digs it because she understands where my heart's at. And every once in a while we go out and shoot around a little bit, but she doesn't really come close to the game anymore. Last one. Favorite character in all of Star Wars. So I am a huge Star Wars fan, always have been. I actually have a Star Wars podcast that I just launched about 2 months ago. It's called Two Sons Podcast. You can find I typically tweet out the links to that, but you can either find it on my Twitter or just Google Two Sons Podcast. It's supposed to be a play on words because we're also from Tucson. I do it with my best friend, a guy in Tucson who's a doctor, and him and I have just both been big Star Wars fans forever. We started covering the Obi-Wan series, to have a really good time with it. I'm one of those nerds that gets into the expanded universe and stuff. My favorite Star Wars character has always been Darth Bane. And if you've never read it, you absolutely have to read the Darth Bane trilogy. It's the best piece of expanded universe content. The only reason I'm accepting this as a legal answer here is because Darth Bane technically is canon per the Clone Wars cartoons. But Darth Bane was the original Sith Lord who discovered that there couldn't be hundreds of Sith because they would always group together and betray the more powerful among them. And the Sith were becoming progressively weaker as they would betray each other. And so basically he went on a pilgrimage and went to all these different Sith temples and stuff, and came back and was like, I have discovered that we need to only have 2 Sith, the master and the apprentice, the one that teaches, blah, 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 blah. But that whole book trilogy and that character, it's a very cool look into the Sith and just how ruthless they are and how different the dark side is from the light side of the Force. So there you go, little window into my second passion, which one of my many passions, but my fan for Star Wars. Like I said, if you want to hear me talk more about Star Wars, you just got to look for that Two Sons podcast. All right, that's not bad. I think we went about an hour. That's our first ever mailbag podcast. I really enjoyed that. I want to do that more frequently, even if it's either just one that we do once a week, or if it's one that we do as a segment at the end of the show. Maybe I can talk to the producers and maybe they'll be down for something like that. But I definitely want to gear the show more towards something that's a little bit more interactive with you guys. I know that it is eventually a plan to try to potentially do something where we can have you guys call into the show, kind of like we used to do on Twitter Spaces back when I was working with Raj. No show tomorrow because I'm getting on the cruise ship. Actually, this one might actually end up being released tomorrow. But on Friday, I believe I'll be able to record again. Not sure what we'll do then. Who knows if someone will get traded at that point. But anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. I sincerely appreciate you guys' support, and I'll see you in a couple days.